everyone, it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I've read recently, aka the books that I read while I had COVID. So unfortunately, after years of avoiding it, years of being vigilant and so careful, I ended up getting COVID. It's really unfortunate. I missed my sister's bridal shower because I was sick, and I actually ended up getting it pretty badly. Like, I was out of commission for a few days. This is the first video I'm filming since then because luckily, since I was supposed to be away anyways, I had pre-filmed a lot. So all the videos that you've seen have been pre-filmed, and we'll see how today goes. Like, my energy is still pretty low. It has been taking a while for me to not feel exhausted whenever I basically do anything. So I'm hoping that I will be able to get a few videos filmed today, but we'll see. It might end up just being one. So yeah, since I had COVID, I didn't really end up reading all that much because I was feeling so poorly. Like, the first day, I couldn't even stand. It was absolutely awful. But as I got better, I did start reading again, and I have a few books that I have read like before I got COVID, and then ones I have read since, and yeah, all of that stuff. Basically, just books since I've read since the last recent reads video that I did, but the interesting hook, if you will, is that I got sick, but whatever. I definitely have been in the mood for more like fun contemporaries, romances, all that stuff. That's kind of what I've been gravitating towards as the weather has been nice. I really have been going for a lot of that, and that is definitely reflected in this pile of books that I've read. Actually, I'll start off with the only fantasy that I've read, and that is Magnifique by Emily J. Taylor. This is a new book that came out this year that I had been highly anticipating. I was really excited for it because it sounds like everything I love, like a whimsical sort of fantasy story. And this one in particular, very much for fans of Caraval or the Night Circus. It's set at this traveling hotel that's like the only place where there's magic, and everyone wants to get in, but obviously like only certain people can actually get in. It shows up at a new place every night. It's just this new thing. And the main characters, they are two sisters that have been kind of struggling since they lost their mother. The older sister is the main character in the perspective you're reading from, and she has been working to take care of her younger sister for a really long time and kind of acts as her mother. She's definitely a guardian figure for her. So her sister the younger sister wants to go to this hotel, and they end up getting a job there. So then they quickly realize that not everything at this hotel is as it seems. By the way, I totally forgot, but these are the books that I'm going to be talking about today, and I'll have timestamps in the description box down below for you guys, and I'm not going to be spoiling anything about any of them, so don't worry if you haven't read any of them yet. But I enjoyed this book. I felt like it was something that I've definitely read before, and like, obviously it is. There are many similarities in this book to other ones that I've read. It really felt like an amalgamation of The Night Circus and Caraval, and actually the other book by Stephanie Garber, Once Upon a Broken Heart, I believe is the title of that one. It felt like if all of those books had a baby, essentially. It was kind of what this book ended up being. So I liked the sister relationship. That definitely called to Caraval a lot. And I enjoyed the atmosphere of the like hotel and everything and how different it was. It was a really cool read. It took me forever to read this one, to be honest. It took me a while to be immersed in it. I was listening to the audiobook, so maybe if I had physically read it, I would have felt a little bit different, but like, it didn't stand out to me. I think it was a solid book. I think it was a strong debut. The writing I really enjoyed, and I did like have a good time reading it. It just didn't really blow me away. And this is the kind of book that the storyline seems like it has potential to be an absolute favorite of mine, and I just don't think it quite got there for me. However, sister relationship, I always love that. So like, it did have a lot of elements that I did really like, but I kind of had trouble. I think the main thing was I had trouble separating it from the books that are definitely like comparables to it. I felt like it was just a bit too similar for my personal taste. I will also say the romance plot line, like, I think that kind of didn't really get me, and that's one of the things in Caraval that I love is the romance plot line there, and I think I wanted a little bit more for this one. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it, but overall, like, I would recommend it. I think it was a solid read. It's just one that I've read other books like it, and this one didn't like stand out to me as amazing. I also did a reading vlog for this next book, but I of course also had to read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I was so excited for a new Emily Emily Henry book because I absolutely adore Emily Henry. She is definitely one of my favorite authors. I think she writes incredible rom-coms. They are just so freaking good. Like, I love them. They are so romantic and hit every level and every note that I'm really looking for. And this book just solidified that, like, I really do love her as an author. She's definitely a favorite of mine. So this one in particular is about a literary agent, and she is like this cutthroat literary agent, but then she ends up going with her younger sister, who, it's kind of a similar situation to Hotel Magnifique, actually. Their mother died, and since then, like, she has really taken care of her younger sister. She's become a guardian for her. And I realize there's actually a lot of books because I'm reading Malibu Rising right now by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and it's kind of the same thing where like the sibling ends up becoming like a parent. So I don't know why. Do you ever have that thing where you're like reading a lot of books that have similar elements and it just happens to be like, it's just a coincidence, if you will? I read like 2 books in a row with the main character being named Ruby, and I just found that interesting. Anyways, so Book Lovers is about a main character, very type A personality. Her sister is very like different than that and has always been taken care of by her. So they end up going on this trip to, it's like this list that the sister makes for her older sister to break out of her shell. And they go to this small town, and it's just like trying to live that small town romance life. That definitely wasn't part of the plot that I was expecting. But along the way, she ends up running into this book editor who is just broody, and she doesn't get along with him, so we have kind of an enemies to lovers story there. I felt like this book was really strong as well. I like that Emily Henry writes bookish romances. Like, we had a travel writer, we had a romance writer, and in this one we have a literary agent, so they all kind of have something bookish going on, which is a lot of fun. The sister relationship I felt like was one of the strongest parts of this. I liked that that was brought into it, and there also was a lot of examination of the past for these characters, so I felt like it was a very well-rounded story. And the relationship, I like the way that she does enemies to lovers. You guys probably know by now, like, enemies to lovers, hate to love. It's not generally my thing, not my favorite. Like, there are ones that I enjoy, but it tends to be ones like this where they're not really enemies. Like, it's not really hate to love. They just kind of had like one interaction where it's like whatever, and then they start to kind of like get to know each other a little bit more, and that was definitely the case here. And I could understand. So one of the things with enemies to lovers is sometimes it's like 2 characters, they don't get along, and then they just keep on like running into each other, and I'm like, why don't you just ignore each other? But in this case, I didn't understand why they were together was because of their jobs. Like, they had to kind of work together because they have an author, and like there's a whole thing with that. So that made sense to me. It just like, it was an enemies to lovers storyline that I could buy into. I can see people not liking it as much because it's kind of like that very fluffy enemies to lovers, but that's personally what I really enjoy. I also thought the whole small town romance vibe, that was a really nice and fun addition that I wasn't expecting. That definitely elevated the story. It was kind of like a little gimmick that added more to it, and I wish I had known that going into it because I feel like I would have read it sooner. I did read it like pretty close to when it came out, but it was just something fun and unexpected. There's also so much transformation for the main character, and it was nice to see that. That's one thing with Emily Henry's books is they're so well-rounded, and like they talk about the past. You get well-rounded characters, a well-rounded storyline and plot line, and you get that development. It's really satisfying in the end, and I felt like this one was no exception. Honestly, I just really loved this, and I loved everything about it. Like, I don't have any complaints. It's just, I think Emily Henry is such a fantastic author, and this just proved that to me. Next, I ended up picking up A One True Loves by Elise Bryant. This is actually, I believe, a sequel, but it's like a companion novel, so I just picked up this one because this is set on a Mediterranean cruise, so that seems like everything that I love. And as I was sitting there in bed just like binge watching seasons of Drag Race on end, rewatching all of my favorites, I just wanted to read something where I could escape, essentially. Not that, I mean, watching Drag Race was great, but I just felt absolutely horrible and could only eat soup, so that was unfortunate. So One True Loves was really, really fun, and I think this is a great book for anyone who's going through that kind of transitional period in between graduating high school and going to university. This is about a character who is in that transitional period, and she has chosen her major, but she's really not sure about it. She felt a lot of pressure to be what her parents are wanting her to be, because she has these siblings who are basically like geniuses, and she's very successful too. But the problem with her is that she's artistic and she likes all different forms of art. There's not really one form that she has wanted to focus on. And now with university, all of a sudden she has to like pick a major and pick something that she's going to focus the rest of her life on. And that's hard for her because she wants to do a little bit of everything. So she goes on this cruise with her family as this like post-graduation trip, and her family ends up discovering that she's having like second thoughts about her major, about going off to New York. She's from California and she wants to go to NYU. So she's kind of having second thoughts about all of that. And her parents end up giving her kind of an ultimatum that she has to make a decision by the end of this week-long cruise. Now, on this cruise, she ends up meeting this guy, of course, and her best friend, who is from the first book, wants her to have this like picture-perfect romance novel experience. And she's kind of surprised that she ends up having that a little bit with this guy that she ends up running into on the Mediterranean cruise. But he starts to try and help her like figure out what it is she wants to do with her life. So I liked the fact that this was examining that transitional period, because I think it is something that's so difficult. Like your whole life, you're kind of pressured to choose one thing and one focus and one thing that you're going to do for the rest of your life. And it's kind of like you can look into it a little bit and then all of a sudden you have to make that decision. And it's such a big decision. It's such a big choice. And I know, at least for me personally in university, in second year, a lot of people ended up changing their majors because they realized, oh, this isn't what I actually want to do. And when you think about it, like I was 17 when I graduated high school and started university. That's so young to be choosing what you want to focus on and what you want to study and what you want to do for the rest of your life, especially after going through high school, where you don't really get those decisions. You don't get those choices. You can choose like some of your classes, but mostly you have mandatory things that you have to do and you're like guided by the hand and then you're just thrown out. I think it was a really shocking time for me. So I appreciate the fact that there are more books that are kind of talking about how shocking that experience can be, and talking through that it's okay to not know what you want to do and to like second guess and have to really think about it, because it is such a big choice, and taking time to make that decision is okay. So I appreciated the fact that this book had a really great romance. It had a really great family relationship as well. I loved the family and how involved they were in the storyline, and also the transformation of the main character. I think this book hit a lot of highs for me and I really, really enjoyed it. Next up, I read How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. I had seen this book pretty hyped up on TikTok and that made me kind of want to pick it up, and I did enjoy this one a lot. I have to say, I have had major brain fog since having COVID, so this is one that I read when I was like really sick, so I don't fully remember everything about it, but I do remember like enjoying it overall. So this is once again kind of a story about a very like type A personality main character, and she loves to-do lists, loves all of that. Everything has a plan. She just kind of has been living in a very routine lifestyle, and her friends are encouraging her to get out of that. So they give her like this list of all of these wild things. Of course, it's like hooking up with people, like one night stand, all of that, to break her out of her shell. And I liked the fact that she like that kind of got the storyline going. It wasn't really a big, huge part of the storyline. I thought it was kind of going to be more involved, but that like the meeting of these two characters and their romance storyline starts pretty early on. And like I said, I did like this one. I felt like the stakes were a little bit low for me, and there were kind of many instances where I was a little bit bored. I didn't feel like there was a ton going on, and I kind of like, I felt like there was a lot of dragging of feet. And I know, like, I understand how it is to, you write these characters that you love, and then you write this relationship between the two of them that you love. So a lot of it was just them being madly in love, and there wasn't really that much conflict. And there are certain books that I've read where there really isn't that much conflict, and I like it, but this one I felt like needed a little bit more conflict to it. I felt like their relationship happened very easily, and then it just kind of like kept happening for the majority of the book, and I was kind of like, okay, but like I feel like I want them to work for it a little bit more, but that's kind of just personal preference. Like I did feel like these characters had really great chemistry, and I loved that about the two of them. It was just kind of like, I don't know. I know this book is really hyped up and I'm not disagreeing with the hype. I think it was a solid read, but it's kind of another instance like Hotel Magnifique. Like, I've read books like this before and this one was good. It just didn't absolutely blow my mind. And the final book that I have read recently is Sister of the Bollywood Bride by Nandini Bajpai. I really wanted to love this book, honestly, and I think maybe if I was younger, like, I feel like if you are going from reading middle grade to YA, this might be a good book to go with. The writing was a little bit simplistic for me. I didn't really mesh with the writing all of that much. That was very improper grammar, but I just didn't love the writing, and I wanted to love the story, but so much of it I was kind of like, what's happening? Like, this is another book where it kind of took a while to get going, but this is about a girl and her sister is engaged and they're trying to plan this huge Bollywood wedding, but on a small budget because her mother has died a few years ago, and the main character knows that, like, her mother would want to throw this huge Bollywood wedding for her daughter, so she takes it upon herself to do this for her sister, and it's really just her doing it. Like, her dad says this is the budget, everyone else is too busy, so she's just planning her sister's wedding on her own. And it just kind of was a little bit boring, like, watching her. It's literally just her, like, planning the wedding, and that was such a big chunk of the book that I was kind of like, okay, like, I'm a little bit bored. And there was a romance plot line that started and I was like, well, this is something, but then it didn't really go anywhere. It just felt like, I don't know, like, it was a very strange reading experience because it was really her planning the wedding, and then she would go and take her dog for a walk. Plan the wedding, then go and take her dog for a walk. And that was really it. So I felt like I was just following her, like, day to day, and it was just kind of like watching, I don't know, bird's eye view on that, which was kind of boring. It just wasn't what I wanted. I wanted, like, higher stakes, a little bit more drama, and I wanted the writing to be a little bit stronger than what it was. So I just was kind of let down by this one because I was really excited for it, but I just felt like meh about it. Okay, so those are all of the books that I've read recently. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if you have read any of these books, your thoughts on them, and I will see you guys in another new video soon. Bye!